Putain, on a galéré à reprendre, je suis désolé. J'ai galéré à reprendre. Faut que je change de... je vais changer de processeur et je vais le monter. Mais ouais. Ouais. Bon, ça me saoule un petit peu parce que bah, j'avais pas prévu, mais ok. Ok, bon bah voilà. Bon allez, hop, on lance la vidéo et on... Tiré.
This is CS50 week 1 section.
Elle lit, ça se voit. Bon, ok, c'est pas grave. Il y a de nouveau des problèmes. Mais non, elle est de nouveau... je croyais qu'il y a des problèmes. Bon, ça a l'air de faire le taf. Ok, bon. Ça a l'air de faire le taf, ça a l'air de marcher. Tout ça a l'air de marcher. Ouais, je cherche un peu. Je cherche en fait un processeur. Bon, je ferai ça après ma pire, c'est pas très grave. C'est pas hyper important son... C'est pas hyper important. Hop.
On C, so if this is what you were expecting to hear, you're definitely in the right place. My name is Yulia. I'm a preceptor here at Harvard. Here's my email address if you have any questions or would like to get in touch. I was actually some years ago a TA at Yale, where we also teach CS50, and now I joined the team on the Harvard side and helping them out with the Harvard College class here on campus, and also supporting all of our students online. So as I mentioned just now, this is week 1 of CS50, and we're going to talk about C. So this is really where everything begins, and we're going to dive into some building blocks that are really going to help us throughout the whole semester. And some things on the agenda for today are variables and operators. So the most basic things that we need to get started. We're going to talk about functions.
Ok,
What are functions?
ça m'a l'air d'être
What
terrible.
parameters functions use, right? How to define functions, how to use them. We're going to chat about conditionals and
Ça m'a l'air
loops.
d'être terrible.
So something that will be really handy in our problem set. And again, just like one of those like stepping stones to get us through the next weeks. And we'll get a little taste of problem set 1. We're going to talk about Mario, how to build those bricks and stack a little nice pyramid. So without further ado, let's get started and let's talk about variables, types, input, and printing. So you might recall that during lecture we talked about a phone book, right? Professor Malin showed an example where if we're looking for some contact or a person, we might flip through the pages,
Ouais.
or we might go to the middle and use a more efficient algorithm of finding that person. Well, today we're taking sort of like a step down from the idea of searching to how are those phone books comprised? Like, what are the components of those? So you might imagine that one of the variables in a phone book
Bonne
is
de
called calls, right? So
J'étais sûr qu'il allait avoir des
maybe
trucs
it
comme
is
ça.
the number of calls that one of your friend called you, right? And maybe they called you 4 times. So you can imagine having this like square or a little box that stores some value, in this case 4. And it is called calls. So what actually is going on like underneath the hood, right? Like what is the code that enables us to have this little square with number 4? Well, it can look a little cryptic for now, but we will parse it together. So in order to get this box with number 4 in it, the line of code we would use is int calls equals 4, right? And as such, there are sort of like 4 components to it. The first one is name, right? Variable name, and it can be whatever sort of like word or phrase you would prefer, sort of like calls or name, age, address, you're gonna see a little later. Next one is type, right? This is very important. We need to tell C exactly what type of value it should expect to receive on its end. So in this case, it is integer, right? Like to specify just like a number that doesn't have any floating points, just one number, right? Integer. Then the value itself, right? Like if we created this box that is called calls and we're supposed to put an integer into it, we're going to put 4 into it. Like that is our value. And lastly, sort of like what brings everything together is the assignment operator, the equal sign. And you might also read it like this. Create an integer named calls that gets the value, that gets the value 4, right? Combining all of our 4 components together to create this variable. Okay. All right, so let's practice one more time. Maybe someone in the chat could type in sort of like a similar definition that we just saw, right? We have int x equal sign and 50. How could we combine it in sort of like one sentence in a way that we saw earlier here? Someone in the chat, if you guys want to type it out. So we have integer x equals 50. How can we sort of like bring it all together into one sentence? All right, seeing none, but this is how you would say it, right? Create an integer named x that gets the value 50, right? Just reading left to right. Yeah, Dado, exactly. Create an integer named x that gets the value 50. So creating these kind of like sentences in your head, right, and relating code to like plain English or whatever language you are studying CS in can really help you get through you know, these first few steps of getting used to how to write code and how to phrase it properly. Well, let's take it a step further. So what if my friend called me another time, right? Like they just gave me a call and now the value is, of course, it should be 5. So how can I change that? Well, we can use a simple reassignment, right? So in the beginning, if we created int calls equals 4, right? That was our initial box we created. And then we want to assign it to 5. What we can do is just have a second line of code where we specify, well, now the value of calls should be 5 and not 4, and therefore the value inside of our box will change as well. And again, sort of like translating it to plain English, the way that it would look like is calls, the variable name, gets 5, right? Combining the name,
C'est
the second
variable. Bon, les
operator,
variables,
and
on connaît. Hein. C'est pas
we're
compliqué.
grabbing our value 4 that was in our little box before. Calls plus plus if we just add in, and you can also use
Ok, bon, ça on connaît. Ah, voilà.
input
C'est
from the
intéressant.
user.
Opérateur.
Well, there are a few ways we can do it. In this case, if we're trying to get an input like that is a number, right, an integer, we might want to use a function called getInt. And again, the way that it's structured, we can like break it down in several components. We are starting with our function, right? So this is the tool that will allow us to grab this input from the user and then store it in our proverbial box. So if we have function getInt, what it takes in, I guess like coming back a little bit, the first part is the function name, right? Like getInt is something that was defined before. It was actually defined by CS50 and is in the library cs50.h that you can also read a little bit more about. But someone once upon a time wrote this function that we now can use to grab these values. Inside of the function is function input. In this case, it is calls, right? So we're prompting the user to input the number of calls in the terminal that we can then later use. And then our next component is talking about like, okay, so we've looked at the code for this function, but how does this actually work, right? Like a lot of moving pieces. So we can imagine this box that represents the getInt function, right? So something will go into the box and something will come out of the box. So what goes into the box? What goes in the box is prompt, right? So in this word in the variable, and before the port in the variable calls. So again, coming back to our idea of having this little box that stores some kind of number. Okay, I see a question. I have a question about format codes. What's the difference between %I and %D? That's a great question. So %I and %D are interchangeable. They're both used for integers if you want to print them out, which is a perfect segue because we're going to talk about printing values in just a second. But %D is a little deprecated and we've been using %I since, so definitely default to that. But as someone in the chat, like how to print out values, right? So for example, we had our value int calls 4 and now we want to print it out. Well, for that we can use function printf, and so we can have some code. It would be right on. That's a great question. So for that, we use cs50.dev, which is the Visual Studio Code for CS50. It's sort of this like virtual IDE where students and teachers and really anyone could use to get started with programming, write their own programs. It is a simplified version of the desktop Visual Code that might be familiar to someone and should be really...
Bah ça marche pas. Il veut pas venir. C'est 50.dev. S'il pouvait venir, ça serait cool. Ah. Ça serait cool, oui. Nouveau fichier. Ah, c'est ça, ok. Ah, en gros, je vais mettre France. Ok, bon. On a un nouveau ok. Ah, ok, il est en cours. En cours de téléchargement. C'est vraiment moche. Genre, je trouve que j'aime. Le truc est moche. Le Visual Studio est moche. Thème. Y'a pas le mode sombre là? Je veux le mode sombre. Alors, je pense. Ah, moderne sombre. Pourquoi il est pas sombre alors? Putain. Ma vie, il se base la même chose sur le PC que le PC. Donc forcément, faut que je suis pas sombre, moi, je suis clair. Ouais, dans le sens, mon PC est en mode clair, ouais. Dark moderne, ok. Miaou, miaou, miaou. Miaou, miaou, miaou. Miaou, 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 miaou. Miaou, 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 miaou. Miaou, 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 miaou. Oh, ta mère, ça marche plus. Je sais plus qui j'ai fait là. Oui, voilà. Voilà, retourner au Visual Studio, voilà. On va dossier, démarrer. Waouh. Créer un dépôt GitHub. Ok. Non, alors là, j'ai fait une bête de conneries. What the fuck? Désolé, il y a des petites déconnexions, reconnexions, je sais pas. Je sais pas pourquoi ça bug le live. Ouais, désolé. La coup bug. Ah. Ah. Ok. Ok, bon. Écoutez. Ok, bon. On va essayer de finir la vidéo et
I'm
puis
gonna write a
on verra.
program that prints
J'essaierai
out
de
hello
comprendre.
world, which is also first step of problem set 0. So we can start checking off some boxes on our list of programs to complete. So to start, let's create this program and I'm gonna call it hello.
Ah oui, ok.
So I'm gonna create a file called hello.c. And again, there, you know,
Ok. Voilà, je vais faire en parallèle en fait d'elle.
several components.
Code. Hello. .c. Ah
Components that go
ouais.
into writing a program. The first one is including the libraries. So I'm going to include standard
Oula, c'est que ça.
io.h. This will allow me to run my program. And then I'm gonna create a function, a main function, right? Like int main void. So in every program you're gonna write in this course and probably in the future, there's gonna be a main function, right? Like the main component of your program that's gonna be responsible for
Oula.
things. And inside of it, let's use the printf function that we just saw earlier in the slides. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out hello world, okay?
Alors.
What we're gonna do, we're gonna print out hello world, okay? Semicolon, and those are a little tricky, and odds are you'll probably forget it not once, not twice, probably many more
Marchera pas
times,
si.
but it is just getting into the habit of it. So let's go back to the terminal and now run make hello to compile.
Ok, et maintenant on essaye si on met make hello. Il se passe rien. Ok. studio.h, c'est pas bon. Il n'y a pas de. Ok. Make hello. Bah, je te veux pas, frère. 6, 11. Print, ok.
Okay, compiles, and now we're gonna run hello.
What the fuck? Ça marche même pas, moi. Attendez. What the fuck? Ok.
Hello,
Attends.
semicolon.
Il y a un truc que j'ai pas fait. Pourquoi j'écris mains? Putain. Ça explique pourquoi ça marche pas du coup. Make hello. Ça marche. Et du coup là tu peux mettre point slash hello. Hello world. Et vu qu'on n'a pas mis, il faut mettre un slash back. And slash back comme ça. Ou c'est comme ça. Je sais plus, je crois que c'est comme ça, je suis pas sûr. Point slash hello. Point slash hello. Alors ok, c'est pour copier-coller. Ok. On va... Ah. Ah. J'ai cliqué où? J'ai fait vider la poubelle. Comment on exécute? Alors attendez. Ah. Ah. Ah, édition. Non, sélection. Ah. Il y a un souci là. Qu'est-ce que j'ai fait? Comment, what the fuck? Hein? La console, comment on la rouvre? Ah voilà, ok, c'est bon, nickel. Make hello. Du coup, il a pas aimé ma make hello, mais il a aimé du coup point slash hello. Ok, bon.
And those are a little tricky, and odds are you'll probably forget it not once, nothing into the habit. Hello. Oh, and oh, right, it's not pretty. It's on the same line with my $sign. So how could I fix that? Like how can I separate it into line? And I'm gonna run hello again.
Ah, elle l'avait mis à l'intérieur, je me dis bien. Non, mais c'est un truc comme ça, ok. Ah, attends. Elle met un slash d'abord, un backslash avec un N dans les sections. Et là, ça fait normalement, si je fais du coup point.
Now I added the new line, but I'm keep running hello, and it's exactly I need to make hello again. So I made every time you make any changes, make sure
Je suis désolé, mais il y a
you
des problèmes de
make the
live, là,
program
je sais pas pourquoi.
again, so that all the
Je sais pas si c'est
changes
moi
are
ou
now
si c'est
reflected.
Twitch.
And boom, we have hello world right here in our terminal on its own line. Okay. Any questions about this? This is sort of like one
Ouais, comment on l'a fait?
here in our term reflected, and boom, we have so that all the changes are now reflected, and boom, program again, so that exactly I need to make hello again. So I made every time you make any changes, make sure you make the program again.
Ah. Mec, alors pour mettre à jour. Et du coup, ça fait point slash hello. Là, ça marche, ok. Ah.
So that all the changes are now reflected, and boom, we have hello world right here in our terminal on its own line. Okay.
Non,
Any questions
bon.
about this?
Ensuite.
And I think even though it's a little simple, there's still mistakes you can make, right? Like there's the new line character you might forget, or you can feel a little proud of yourself even for getting that far. Sort of like the escape character that we were just talking about. So quotes like around hello, do in the quote. I have my quotes around hello. Let me make hello again. Run it. Okay, hello world. Now let's...
Ah, nickel. Elle m'a exactement dit la commande que je voulais. Claire.
Go back to our slides and see the next thing we're going to accomplish is let's write a program hello me or hello your name to complete the second step of problem set 0. Going back to csv.dev now, and let's keep editing just in this file hello.c. So my name is Yulia, and I could just do hello Yulia. Right? I'm gonna make hello.
C'est
I'm gonna
écrit
run
avec 2 i.
hello.
Chou-i.
Hello Yulia, right? So is this a trick? Like this is it? The program is done? We can now move on to our next challenge?
Nope.
What could we change here to actually make it say hello name? Like
On peut définir une variable name. Ah, ça me casse les couilles. Je pense que c'est pas mal cool. Je pense qu'il y a vraiment un problème avec Twitch.
I'm going to use another function called getString. Very similar to getInt. It's just meant to get strings from users, not integers. And then I'm gonna ask, what is your name?
What is your name? What is your name? Et je crois qu'il va falloir inclure de 1650.
Leaving space, not forgetting about the semicolon. And then here I'm going to say
C'est pas ce qu'on a fait avec David
hello
Milliman.
name. Okay, make hello. Oh, okay. Here's our first error, right? They're super cryptic, right? This is a lot, like from the CS50 library. So for that, I'm going to include cs50.h. Okay, and so this will allow us to use now string and getString to get users input. So let's make hello again. Let's run hello. What is your name? Julia. Uh-oh.
Mais c'est en fait, elle répète la même chose que
I see some questions
David.
in the chat, so let me scroll and see. Gigi saying, can you explain what %s does? Yeah, totally. So
en fait, on reprend de zéro le truc. C'est ça. Ce qu'on fait, c'est que on refait la même vidéo qu'une heure, sauf que plus lourd, plus court, pardon. Plus court qu'avec David. C'est tout. Mais sinon, on refait la même chose, toi. Sauf cette fois-ci, on doit faire exactement la même chose. Ouh, c'est dingue. C'est dingue. Attendez. Ah, purée. Je sais pas.
to get users input. So let's make hello again. Let's run hello. What is your name? Julia. Uh-oh. Hello name. Isn't it supposed to print hello Julia? Placeholders or so for instead name. So let's make hello again.
On va copier-coller celle-là parce que saoule. Voilà. Ça pour un slash. Non, ça c'est mieux. Non, c'est encore mieux. C'est encore mieux, mais alors en même temps, il me faut un truc pour écrire. Sinon, ça marchera pas. C'est au moins un Word. Alors, je vais mettre rêve. Point slash alors. Voilà. Juste assez pour. Ah, nickel.
Let's run hello. What is your name, Julia? Uh-oh. So, would have print these like percent.
Alors ça, je ne mets pas. Mais bon. Pourcent S. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'elle dit pour.
Operators.
Pourquoi il faut le mettre?
And after the comma, I'm going to put name, right? So what I'm saying is the text itself is going to be hello, comma, space, and then I'm saving a placeholder for a value stored in variable name that is of type string, right? So you see how these pieces are sort of like connecting between each other. And then I'm saving a placeholder for a value stored in variable name that is of type string, right? So you see how these pieces are sort of like connecting between each other, string name, variable name.
À la fin,
A mistake here. Why does it keep printing out for half? Slightly bigger. What is going on here? Right, like we have name Julia. Yay, okay, so this is
ok, c'est bon.
going well. Let's try it again. Hello, what is your name? For example, David. Hello. So yeah, right. Like we have. Remember how just now when we like dynamic interaction between the variable and grabbing the value. So similar thing is going on here. We want to make sure that we have the placeholder for our variable name so that like whatever user types in, like David, Daniel, Andrew, Bob, doesn't matter. Like we can put it inside of our string that is ultimately in printf. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. All right. Okay, any other questions about this program? Hello me or hello world? Okay. Alrighty, seeing none. So let's move on to our next exercise. So next what we're gonna do is create a program that stores and prints out some information like name, age, phone, number, can be address or hometown of your friends, like so adding some more layers to our hello me problem. So for that, let's create a new file called friends.c.
Ok.
Alrighty, it opened up here in the terminal. Let's create sort of like the same steps that we've done before. So we want to include standard io.h library.
On va aussi inclure au cas où celui-là. Voilà.
Library. We want to have int main void curly braces. Okay, so what we're going to do next is like sort of few steps. So let's try to think what attributes my friends can have, right? So the first one was name. That's easy. That's something that we just talked about. What other things can we ask our friends to input? Age, yeah, so maybe age. Height, yeah, that's a good one. Let's maybe do hometown. Okay, and maybe let's do phone number. All right. So as you might see, these are commented out, right? Like these are not lines of code. These are not doing anything. These are comments. And the way you can do them is by
Voilà, ah oui, c'est un commentaire ça.
doing 2 slashes in a row. So for get name, we're going to do something very similar that we just did in Hello C, right? Like string name, get string, what is your name? So let's do just that. So I'm going to create a variable called string name, get string. I'm gonna ask, what is your name? Semicolon. For age now, I'm going to use an integer.
Ah bah voilà. Du coup, ouais, c'est string age est égal get string what is your age. Voilà, et là on met point virgule. Et voilà. Donc, tu vois, c'est
Integer. So, oops. I'm gonna do int age equals get int. What
oui,
is
c'est
your
une chaîne, donc
age?
c'est un. Oui, ok.
Okay, semicolon. Same for hometown. I'm going to say string
Ouais,
hometown.
c'est un string.
Get string. What
Alors, je sais pas
is
si ça met
your
un
hometown?
majuscule. Ah non, même pas de majuscule, c'est moi je te dis. Town. Hometown, get string. What is your hometown? Voilà.
Down. Semicolon. And then for phone number, I'm gonna do int number equals get string, sorry, get int. What is your phone number? Okay. And I think I forgot to include CS50 library again, so let's not make the same mistake. Let's come back and put it here on top.
What? Attendez. Ok, bon. Ah, je vais aller faire du sport cet après-midi.
Okay, let's start with this, right? Like, let's make sure we can grab our variables. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, good eyes. Forgot to include the library. So
J'ai rien oublié.
let's make this first and then see if we're getting any errors. Fingers.
Il y a un truc à pas. Ok, bon, on a une truc, ligne 19. Ah. Fingers
crossed. None. That's awesome. And then let's run it to see. If we're getting
J'ai un truc qui va pas dans mon truc.
so let's not make this.
C'est ça. Donc, si, c'est censé marcher, mais. Make friends. Ok, il y a encore une erreur. Il y a un truc qui va pas, c'est que c'est pas dans la function ID.
Same as town Cambridge.
Cambridge. Ok, bon, stop. Peut-être qu'il faut laisser un espace. C'est pourtant étonnant parce que
Bridge.
bah non.
And then what is your phone number?
Qu'est-ce qui va pas, frère? Qu'est-ce qui va pas dans ce code? Non, je peux pas. Voilà, attends. On va quand même demander à... Oula. Oh, mais j'ai trouvé le problème alors. What the fuck. Ok. J'ai trouvé le problème alors. C'était pas comme ça avant. Non, c'était pas comme ça avant. Ok, it meant invite. Alors, man, c'est pas possible. Je l'ai déjà réglé avant, mais c'est pas grave. Explique pourquoi il peut y avoir. Ok. Point slash friends. What's your name? 18. France. On va voir. Ok, bon, ça me doute.
Number. I'm going to
Faut que
say
j'arrête avec main.
1 1 1 1 1 1. Okay, so it didn't like it. Let me do this again. So it's for prompting me again. What's going on here? Why can I not put in my phone number?
Ah, c'est
Oh
prend
wait,
que
it's
du
a fake
numéro.
phone number, right? But yeah, exactly. So parentheses doesn't count as an infinitive string. So notice how on line 16 right here, I defined number, like the phone,
Float.
the variable is gonna call, excuse me. I define number, the variable that's going to store my phone number as an int. But there's a lot of different formats in which you can write it. Like surely you could have done like 111, 111, 1111. This works, right? But what if I want to include the parentheses and the dashes? So Since we're not going to do like any mathematical operations with the number, it is totally fine to just store it in a string and allow for those different formats to come in. So let's make this again. Let's make the terminal slightly bigger. Make friends. Let's run it. Okay, Julia, 22. Cambridge. Now let's try this format again. Oh, yay. Now it works. Okay, awesome. So changing it to the string did the trick.
Ok.
Now we can put whatever formats we want. Let me pause here for a second. Any questions about how we just got all these user inputs? This is sort of like a conventional way to write main functions, right? So it doesn't necessarily take anything as an input, so that's why we leave it as void, but we do expect to get a number from it, and you can notice that here we're not actually returning anything, right? Like even the printf, like the printf action is not actually returning a value, right? It's like more of a side effect that we have in the terminal, but good question. Defining the correct variable. Sorry, when I'm just leaving like little hints for myself, right? To remember what I was, put it all together. So let's create a sort of a lengthy sentence where we're gonna say, my new friend's name
Bon, déjà, c'est toujours comme ça.
is %s.
Et là, ouais, ok. My name is %s. Et là, tu mets la variable name qui est virgule. Là, on met juste backslash n variable. Tu mets juste la variable du coup comme il faut et tu mets ici name friends. Sauf qu'on n'a pas encore défini donc.
And then I'm gonna say comma %i for a.
Ok, ouais, j'ai rien dit. %i for a c'est a.
Each. They are from.
The fuck? Qu'est-ce qu'il fait?
%s again because I'm.
What the fuck?
Using hometown now, and their phone number
Ou pas, c'est peut-être
is %s.
Elle a mis une virgule, on sait pas.
Again, right? So now we sort of like need to match it back together.
Ah non, non, elle a mis un 1, frère, je sais pas pourquoi elle met un 1. Ok, there are. Non. There are phone number. Et là, elle met un S de nouveau. %S.
So the first %s was referring to a name. The next %s was referring to an age. The third one was referring to hometown. And the second one was referring to number. Right, so you can sort of like again see how all these things come back together. So we started off by creating users' inputs. So by
Attends, phone number is Alors, je crois qu'elle a mis... ouais.
Grabbing user's input, creating variables name, age, hometown, number, storing them in the variables appropriate types, and then we're printing out all of these variables in a sentence by using these placeholders. So let's make this. So make friends. Oops, I forgot.
Ah bah yeah, logique. Alors c'est toujours ici.
Colin. See, I told you it was gonna happen at some point, and it happened to me. So let's do it again. So make friends. Okay, it compiles. Friends. That's
Ok, elle s'en fout de l'erreur. Elle s'en fout de l'erreur.
run it. What is your name, Julia? What is your age, 22? What is your hometown, Cambridge? What is your phone number?
C'est pas une ville, mais c'est pas grave. Ok. Hometown, c'est la ville, mais c'est pas grave. J'ai pas envie de mettre ma ville. Donc on peut mettre Colmar. Voilà. On va mettre un comme elle fait. Un. Ah, il accepte pas, donc tu vois.
Okay. My new friend's name is Julia, 22. They're from Cambridge, and their phone number is 1111. Lots of ones.
Et elle dit pas du coup my new friends.
Miss Julia, age 22. What is your hometown, Cambridge? What is your phone number? 111.
Oh, c'est ouf ça. Elle dit pas le.
Okay. My new friend's name is Julia, 20.
My new friends. Eh, elle dit pas moi, ça dit pas ça. Il y a un problème. Attends. Printf, ok. Name, age, hometown, number. Oh là là, putain. C'est ouf.
22. They're from Cambridge.
Bon, ça marche pas. Je vous le dis. Make friends.
Cambridge, and their phone number is 1111. Lots of ones. Okay, and I think I'm forgetting a new line because I see that my ones are now getting on the next one. So I'm just going to create that here. Let me compile it again. What's your name? Julia, 22, Cambridge, 111, 111, 111. Okay, so still going a little bit over the line, but that is the program that we just wrote. Okay, let me bring the terminal down a little bit. And said, what's the difference between %s and %i? That's a great question. So you notice how here we define name as string and then hometown as string and then numbers string as well. These are sort of like text or like words. And this is exactly why we want to create these different placeholders to distinguish between the different types that we have. So placeholder s is for strings or words, and placeholder I is for integers, which is just kind of numbers.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Gigi said, what does make file of loops and conditionals? So let's talk about conditionals first, right? So you might see something like this. If calls less than one, printf call more often, right? But what is actually going on here? Well, again, several components to it, right? It's just like Legos, it's like building blocks. So the first one is Boolean expression. We're checking some kind of condition, right? Like we're taking that variable calls where we are storing 4 or 5 or any other value. We're checking if it is less than 1 in this case. If the expression is true, we're then going inside of our conditional, right? Like these curly braces that are hugging our printf statement. If the Boolean expression is actually true, we're going to execute this conditional code. So if calls is less than 1, if it's like 0, or maybe even negative, which is probably not possible, but we're going to printf call more often, right? If we have multiple situations that we would like to address, this is where else statements come in. So the first one can still be if calls is less than 1, right? This is our like first condition that we want to check. And then else sort of like takes care of all the other options, right? So if calls is not less than 1, we want to print f thanks for calling. So it means that calls is either 1 or more. So the Boolean expression was indeed false, and we jumped to our next part of code. And these are mutually exclusive, right? So either one or the other can happen, and they're separated by this else in the middle. All right. Shahab asked, referring to the previous exercise, in sake of style, is it better to print off every information separate line? That's a great question. Yeah, you could have noticed that my line was getting a little long, right? Like it was kind of going off screen. It depends on the situations, right? Sometimes you want to print out everything in one go, and then with sort of like in the terminal jump between the lines, but sometimes you want to print it out in different printf statements, and that's totally fine as well. All right. Let's move into loops. So next we're going to talk about while loops and for loops. And let's start with while loops. Again, we're going to break down some of the components. And the first one that we have going top to bottom is initialization, right? So we're creating this variable I, and we're setting it to 0. And that's going to be our count, right? Like it's going to be the variable that helps us make sure we're doing the right number of repetitions or loops. So the next part is Boolean expression, right? Like something that we just saw. The comparison is going on, right? We're going to get either true or false. And if it is true, we're going to go into our next chunk, right? Like in the code that is hugged by these curly braces. So if the Boolean expression is indeed correct, we're going to go inside of our while conditional. And I'm missing a step here. We are first going to go into printf, right? We're still going top to bottom. So we're going to do printf, we're going to print out I in the first iteration, right? It's going to be 0, and then we're going to increment bumping an I by 1, and then going into the Boolean expression again. So let's visualize it. So right, again, let's go back to our boxes. Let's try to picture these things in our heads. So again, we're starting with int I equals 0. We're creating this box. We're storing value 0. Second part is I less.
Bon, vous savez quoi? Vu qu'au final, on n'a pas. Vu qu'il reste actuellement 10 minutes là pour juste avant midi, je pense qu'on va finir jusqu'à midi. Il reste à peu près 10 minutes là et on a fini le truc. Je pense du coup pas prendre de pause là et on finit jusqu'à midi et puis voilà, après j'arrêterai.
Than 1. And it's sort of like this like message or idea that is going on, like, right? Nothing gets printed out, nothing gets returned or changed in this step, but it's still a step that we need to make. So we're asking ourselves, is I less than 2? And I is less than 2, it's 0. So then we're going inside the curly braces. We're going to printf, right? Print out the value that I currently has, which is 0. And next step, we're going to increment I by 1. And as someone said before, another way to do it is I++. Both formats are correct. Next, we're going to go back to our Boolean expression. Note that we're not going back to int I equals 0. Like we've done that step, we're past it. We're now coming back to the Boolean expression. We ask ourselves, is I less than 2? Well, I is 1, so yes, it is true. We're going back inside, we're printing out I, which is in this case 1, and now we're incrementing I by 1 again. And now repeating the process again and again. So is I less than 2? Well, I is not less than 2, right? Like I is 2. So our Boolean expression is false. And now we will finish the program, right? Like we're going to be past this while loop and just left with what's on the right. Okay. So what are some other ways that we could do things? So let's consider this block inside, right? Like the printf and the I++. Let's try translating it into for loops, like one of our other tools that we have. So notice how we're still grabbing the printf portion, right? Like that is the part of code that's gonna go with us to the for loops. And going to the next slide, we see exactly that. So we kept the printf part, and now the first line looks very cryptic, like what is going on? I see I++, it looks kind of similar, I less than 2, but completely different format, right? It's actually all of the same things that we just saw in the previous slide, right? So just like with the while loops, we're defining int I equals 0. Just as with while loops, we're setting up our Boolean expression, which is I less than 2. And just as while loops, we're incrementing I++. So we can think about it in the same ways that we did with while loops, the initialization, the Boolean expression, and the increment. And then ultimately, we will print f our I in this case, right? So still going through the steps of initializing I to 0, leaving it aside, and then going into the for loop, printing out I one by one until we reach false with our Boolean expression. Okay, before we jump to the next part, which is actually talking about Mario, one of the problems on the problem set, what questions do we have about conditionals, for loops, or while loops? I'm gonna stop here to look at the chat.
Look at the chat. Look at the chat. Look at the chat.
What is the do
Ça me
loop
fait rire.
syntax? I think you're referring to
Elle est
the
trop
do
marrante.
while loop, and we'll actually
Look
is the
at the
do loop?
chat. Look at the chat. Elle est trop marrante. J'aime trop.
syntax. I think you're referring to the do while loop, and we'll actually see it in just a second because we're gonna talk about it as we're writing Mario. Good question.
Good question. Good question. Good
Any other
question.
questions about for loop, conditionals, while loops?
While loops. Elle est marrante.
Yeah, so Remy says what to use what in these. So it really depends on sort of like what you're trying to accomplish. And as you just saw, they're pretty interchangeable. We can use either while loops or for loops. Either or is fine. But the way that I like to think about
Bon, vu qu'on va parler de... On finit les questions et
you want to
après...
use for loops when you know the exact number of steps you want to take, right? Like you know that you're going to take 2 steps, you can set the Boolean expression correctly and easily. And with the while loops, sort of like a more fluid, right? Like in this case, right, it is very similar. We can translate while loop into the for loop easily, but sometimes we don't know the exact like I is less than 2, right? Like maybe it's some other condition. Maybe it's like, is it empty? Is some variable empty, or like have we reached like the end of something? So with while you have more freedom to play around with different Boolean expressions that you want to set, versus for loops are more strict in that sense. Like, right, you have to have like 2, 3, 4 count. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about Mario, which I think is everyone's favorite problem set, and it's a lot of fun. But the problem at hand that we have is that if you are not familiar, Mario is a video game where a character called Mario hops around this
Elle nous explique ce que c'est Mario quand même.
imaginary world that is built of like bricks and other things. So one of the images from the game is sort of this like pyramid, right? That goes like dun 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 step by step, which is exactly what we'll try to build today. So we will not build such a fancy image as we see here, but we would want to build something like this, right? Like
Ok. On va faire une boucle, c'est sûr. Et à chaque boucle, on ajoute +1. Voilà. C'est tout. C'est tout ce que je dis. Alors maintenant, c'est comment le faire, mais regardez ça. C'est à chaque boucle, on ajoute +1. C'est tout.
right-sided.
À chaque fin de boucle, pardon, on ajoute +1. On fait une boucle, ensuite, à chaque fin de boucle, on ajoute +1. Et on répète la boucle du coup.
Pyramid that goes up in a similar way as it does on the image. But let's start with a left aligned pyramid first. Like this will be a little easier to tackle.
Ouais.
And for that, let's go back to our VS Code. I'm going to clear the terminal and I'm going to create. Oops.
On va pas le faire. On va pas le faire aujourd'hui, mais on le fera demain. Ok? Parce que demain, du coup, on a le temps. Et voilà. Là, on n'a pas le temps de faire. Et en fait, à mon avis, ce qu'on a dans le projet, c'est aussi un truc hyper similaire. On va devoir faire des espèces de niveaux pour y arriver. Ok? C'est pour ça.
Create a new file called Mario.
On peut déjà créer, si on veut, lire code Mario.si.
All right, I'm gonna close these friends. I'm gonna clear the terminal. Okay, so again, building blocks, right? Like we have to make sure we're including all the necessary things for a program to run. And let's start with our headers. So we're gonna start with 10.
Alors, je sais pas si on peut enregistrer. Je suppose qu'on peut enregistrer, voilà. Ok. Ça, on s'en fout, ça, on s'en fout. Ok, bon. C'est vachement bien qu'empêche, on touche un peu à tout et du coup, on voit un peu. Je m'attendais pas à ce niveau court comme ça, mais ok. Pourquoi pas du coup? Du coup, ça va être hyper similaire avec ce qu'on doit faire. Donc ouais, c'est vachement bien. Bon, en
Oh, as
haut,
we saw here, the pyramid can be of that
ouais, je suis sûr on utilise une boucle.
time to element.
Et là, on voit la taille de la pyramide. What is the height of the pyramid?
A pyramid of that height, right? And that's where things
C'est la
get
hauteur,
a
pardon. C'est pas la height, c'est la hauteur. C'est la
little bit
taille.
tricky.
C'est pas, ouais.
How? No.
Ouais, ça revient au
Let's
même, mais
work on
taille et hauteur, quand même, c'est différent.
this. And difference is 4. Exactly. I also need 4. It does not put I wanted to do. This was something I'm going to set. Move printf hashtag inside of the for loop. Indent it. Let's make Mario again. Okay. Is it keep printing out 4 hashes?
Ah, tu vois? J'étais sûr que c'était une boucle.
Even if I put hard code the number puts in.
Voilà. Ah, on le voit là. C'était une boucle, c'était sûr.
I will be able to say, can I change this?
En tout cas, c'est vachement bien. Bon, il est 59, 58. Mais bientôt 59. Waouh, c'était vachement bien. Alors, juste pour savoir, j'ai fait quoi? Niveau... Qu'est-ce que j'ai fait en fait niveau... Niveau temps de deep focus? Je voulais savoir. Parce que... En fait, je crois pas les avoir fait les... On va aller juste sur... Ah oui, tu peux pas prendre ce qu'on veut. Alors, non, bah, il y a... YouTube... On va taper... Ah bah, nickel. Ah, on tombe direct sur le site. Oh, c'est un peu lent. Super. Alors, on va taper... Novaya... 13-10, 2025, 6h02. Ok. Ah oui, ok, c'est des rediffs. Non, c'est toujours pas. En fait, j'ai que des J. Ok, bon, on ira voir ça tout de suite sur la fin. Ok, n'hésitez pas d'ailleurs à aller voir mon site. Voilà, voilà. Ok, bon, alors ça j'en vais.
Pour le WEC, faut de l'eau. Donc mon rêve, c'était d'habiter au bord de l'eau. Naturellement, je suis arrivé ici et je sais pas, ça a 7 ans si mes calculs sont exacts. T'es en train de...
On a rarement de moments comme ça dans la vie, on sent.
Ah, elle est pas française. Elle est.
La vague du bateau et en téléski nautique en utilisant des obstacles.
Are you sure you wanna live here?
Ah, voilà, elle est.
Donc moi, j'ai pas mal appris pendant ces travaux. Repas, le coin cuisine et nouvellement le coin bar aussi qu'on vient de faire. C'était un projet qu'on avait depuis quelques temps.
Stylé.
Dans mon rêve, dans notre rêve avec mon mari depuis le début, qui viennent connaître
Le côté dur.
On a ajouté un jacuzzi et un sauna. C'était complètement important pour nous de mettre ces prestations. Un, parce qu'on voulait faire une maison haut de gamme, mais aussi pour être dans l'ambiance.
J'avais vu ça la dernière fois, je crois que c'était. L'émission, normalement, c'est Our House. Ils ont repris un truc d'américain et ils ont fait une émission française. C'est tout. Bon, cela dit, merci beaucoup d'avoir été présent. Merci beaucoup d'avoir été présent. Ça a été un vrai plaisir d'être avec vous ce matin. Oh, on a bien travaillé. Enfin, cela dit, moi j'ai bien travaillé. Ah? Ouais. On a bien travaillé. Merci beaucoup d'avoir été présent. On se retrouve demain, 6h, même heure, toujours. Ou sinon cet après-midi. Je sais pas si je vais live cet après-midi, on verra. Je pense live, mais je suis pas sûr. Parce qu'il y a quelques petits bugs là. Bon, merci beaucoup d'avoir été présent. Demain, 6h. Nouveau. On continue le projet. On fait du C cette semaine, donc voilà. Allez. Peace. Comme d'habitude.